please say hello or something like that so that I know you are here. The show will start in 1 minute. The show will be starting in 1 minute. 1 minute, 1 minute. Just getting everything set up. I hope there are people here. I'll do the show even if there's no one here because it entertains me. But the Coronacast Comedy Show is going to be starting in 1 minute. If you're in the chat room, holla so I know that I am not alone. Isabel is back. Hello. The Corner Plot is back. Hello. Good to have you all back. Everybody, welcome. Let me take a drink and then we shall officially commence episode 12 of the Coronacast Comedy Show. Also, I'm trying a few different things with the layout. You can put in your comments if you think it looked better today. I've eliminated a lot of the distractions so that I'm up filling the screen in your face. So we're going to play around with this. I've put the suggestions over here. I don't know if they're visible, but maybe I should even remove them and just tell you the suggestions. Anyway, let's start officially. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to... Oh, sorry, very important. Let me just do one thing to let the people on Facebook be able to watch this show. Okay, so people on Facebook are currently not there. Let me turn it into public. Sorry for the delay. I am coming back. I am just making it public. Because right now, some people told me they had to be my friends to watch. Okay, now anybody on Facebook can watch me. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Coronacast Comedy Show here with Daliso Chaponda. We're on episode 12. And episode 12 is going to be a little bit different from all the other shows which have gone before. So what I've been doing, I've done around 4 times, is for some of the episodes, I do a build your own comedy show, jokes from audience request show. Now, I was going to do that for today, but at the same time, as any other self-employed people know in the UK, a lot of paperwork right now because of, filing your taxes while also dealing with the fact that you don't necessarily have income coming in. Loads of paperwork. I've been delaying doing the paperwork. That was what I did for most of the day today. So I only had around 2 hours to write, which is not enough time to write up to the caliber that I like, right? But instead of canceling the show, I thought I'd do something in the middle, right? I thought I would talk you through the jokes I have written, but also explain why I don't think they're good enough, because usually I do what I call writing level 4. Okay, now this is when it's going to get crazy geeky. We're going into the nuts and bolts of being a comedian. Some of you may be like, screw this, and you're out of here. I fully understand if this is not what you want, but don't worry, the jokes are going to come. So, essentially, the way that I write, I feel there are levels to writing. Levels to writing, right? So level 1 writing is what I've done for all of the topics. Now, what is level 1 writing? It's the most obvious joke. Give you a perfect example. R. Kelly, the singer, in prison right now, right? Because he's still on trial for taking advantage of underage women, right? He put a plea out that he wants to get out of prison because of the coronavirus, because of COVID-19. If you go to Twitter right now, if you go to Facebook right now, put in R. Kelly, you will see around 150 different people came up with the same joke or a variation of the joke, basically on, hey, the number is COVID-19, huh? He likes underage people. Well, he shouldn't be afraid because he'd only get if it was COVID-15. Or some version of that where people are playing with the idea that he liked underage people and COVID has the number 19 in it. It's funny. I'm not saying it isn't funny. It's very funny. If it made you laugh, there's nothing wrong with it. It probably made me laugh. But that's what I call level 1 writing, when you do the most obvious joke, right? And it can make people laugh, but it might be something that a lot of other people are doing. So what I usually then do is you go to level 2, right? Level 2 is when you think about it more, right? You start analyzing and chopping it and going onto angles. So if it was the R. Kelly story, maybe level 2 is I'd be thinking about what else do we know R. Kelly for? We know him for his songs. And maybe I'd get a list of all his song lyrics and I'd see ones which I could use in the joke. Maybe something like, I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. Then I could be like, touching the sky. Not touching people during Corona. You can make that little connection. Maybe there's a joke in there. But then you go beyond that. You're like, he's in prison. What else is there? Okay, so with coronavirus, you got to wash your hands for 30 seconds. In prison, you do not want to drop the soap in the shower, right? You see, there are ways you can make connections. Solitary confinement. We are all in solitary. There are loads of connections, and that would be level 2, is when I start exploring all the connections and trying to find a better joke than the obvious joke. But that's not even it, because level 3 is when maybe I take it from a story about a celebrity and try to make it something bigger, right? Because, who really cares what's going on with R. Kelly? So that's where I would start thinking of level 3 is like maybe, okay, what more is there? What other people are in this situation? Is there something I could explore? Is there anything I want to say about maybe how prisoners are treated during a crisis? Or is there anything I want to say maybe about people regretting horrible things they did in their past, or us losing admiration of our idols? That's like sort of the third phase, is when you start looking into like broader implications. And then level 4 is when I start thinking about, well, what do I want to say? What's important in this story that I want to make a joke about, right? And that's level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And that's usually when I do these Coronacast comedy shows, when I've got it to at least level 4. That wouldn't be the final stage if life was as normal. Because if life was normal, level 4 is when I would go to a comedy club, right? Try it out in front of a crowd, see what makes a laugh, what doesn't get a laugh, and then rewrite it and make it better. That's level 5, man. So there are 5 levels. Today, for the ideas, I've mostly done level 1, level 2, because I didn't have a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through all of the jokes which I wrote and maybe give you a little bit of insight into where I might have gone. Now, the subjects which I'm going to do, I'm not sure if it's visible because I'm trying something a little bit different, but the subjects are biscuits, Kpop, corruption, vacuum cleaners, the Illuminati, millennials, courage, okapis, government, isolating in a small flat, are we all dead, cactus, and students. Now, these were all taken from audience suggestions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through them, probably do 3 at a time. And then after every 3, I'll look at the comments. And if you have any questions, that's when I'll answer it. So before I get to the first ones, let me take a look. Okay, so Isabel says the suggestions are there, but they're very small. Okay, I think we can probably just close it. Okay. Swing Low Barney says, shout out to Tinkerbella Rose. She watching again? Do you know Tinkerbella Rose that you want me to do a shout out to her? Or are you checked out her pictures and now you're hoping she's watching? That is hilarious. Well, feel free to perv away. Next up, what else do we have? You can't see the suggestions. Do you want to see the suggestions? Do we need to see the suggestions? Look, I don't know how to make them visible. I tried to do a thing of overlays, and I clearly did not understand what I did. As I said, this Coronacast Comedy Show is a learning system where I'm trying to learn some things, and sometimes I am failing. Are you bothered by the arrow? Let's move the arrow. And in fact, let's move the suggestions. Let's delete the suggestions, okay? So now, nobody will be able to see the suggestions, right, because they're distracting, and I will just tell you what was suggested as I do that joke. Okay, any questions before we get started? Any questions? Phil Scuba says, you didn't use my suggestion, Phantom of the Opera. Yes, I do not always use all the suggestions, particularly when I do not have time. Today, I did less suggestions than usual because most of the day was spent doing my taxes. Taxes! Death and taxes are certain, so you cannot hide away from you. Cheryl Stotler Miller, yes, I can see you. Hello, hello, hello. So let's get started. So I will start with the first suggestion, which was they may be out of order, but at Ellie Seguteres asked me to do a joke. Oh, they're backwards. They're backwards. That was the last joke. Okay, now I understand. Okay, so now we're at the top. So at Jacob Hughes wanted a joke about biscuits. Biscuits. Now, I started looking into this. This is what I'm saying, that I didn't finish the joke. But I started looking into it. I thought of what's my favorite cookie? What's my favorite biscuit? The one which makes me excited. And I thought about gingerbread cookies. I always loved them when I was a kid. There's the idea that it's a cookie that's also a person. I absolutely loved it. And I started doing some research into gingerbread cookies throughout history. And I saw that the largest gingerbread man in history, in the Guinness Book of World Records, it was made by the staff of the IKEA, right, in Furuset in Norway. And I just started thinking, IKEA staff made a gingerbread coffee? I bet, I'm pretty sure, they probably started out not using a recipe. And then they made a gingerbread man, realized some of the bits were missing, and then they looked at the recipe, and then they had to pull it apart and start again to get the right gingerbread cookie going. Bam! There you go. There's a level 1 joke for you. But I started thinking more. If I was going to pursue it and try to get to level 2 of the joke, I started thinking about the story of the gingerbread man. You know, the story you read when you're a little kid about how the gingerbread man, so there was an old lady and an old man, and they were very hungry. And they started cooking a gingerbread man, and then he jumped out of the pot and he says, "You're not gonna eat me!" And he runs. Imagine if we had to chase our food. Wouldn't that be crazy? I cooked a curry today. I'd have to be running down the street saying, "Hey, come back, you nut bread! Huh? Come back, you dal! I want to eat you!" Imagine we all had to chase our food. And so the gingerbread man goes running, and if you know the story, he runs across a cow, and he says, "You're not gonna eat me." He runs away from the cow. He comes across a pig. He says, "You're not gonna eat me." And then at the end of the story, he runs into a fox, and the fox tricks him, gets him to trust him, and then the fox eats him. Such a tragic ending to a little fairy tale. But I was thinking, you didn't trust a pig, you didn't trust a cow, you trusted a fox. You deserve to be eating gingerbread. Anyway, as I said, if I had more time, I probably would have elaborated a bit more. But that's where I got with biscuits. Let's move on to the next one. So, at KAD5N wanted a joke about K-pop. Now, if you're not aware what K-pop is Korean pop. K-pop. And I know very little about K-pop. I've listened to a bit of it when it went viral, but I know nothing about it. So, again, I went down a rabbit hole. I started watching little clips and reading about K-pop. And the fascinating thing is actually the way it is evolved, the way it is created is probably its biggest difference from Western pop, right? Because Western pop, you've got like somebody who wants to be a singer, like a Taylor Swift or a Britney Spears or someone like that. They work hard at trying to become a singer, and then maybe they catch the eyes of a studio, and they get them to produce their music. They collaborate or something like that, and that's how pop music ends up in the West. What's fascinating about Korean pop, K-pop, is it happens in an entirely different way. So what happens is the studios, not the studio, the record companies, they decide to create music, and what they do is they go around looking for interesting people. They don't care if you can sing, right? They don't care about things like you could sing. They're like, we can train you to sing. They don't care about dancing. We can train you to dance. They care about things like, are you an interesting looking person? Not necessarily stunning, often stunning, but if you're like weird looking or something like that, have you got something they think's gonna pop? And then they will put you into essentially boot camps. They will train people for up to 2 years. It's like pop star military. Imagine like Spice Girls military. Instead of learning how to shoot, you're learning how to shimmy. You're learning how to pout. You're learning how to sing falsetto. You're learning all of these things for years, becoming the best version of a pop star. And then at the end of your boot camp, once you're trained, then you're put in a band. And It's absolutely wonderful. Now, as you see, I didn't really have a joke, but I thought there was some funny thoughts when I'm talking about the shimmying classes and anyway, as you see, did not get far enough because I had no time, but it's still fascinating, isn't it? Okay, let's move on. Let me look at the notes. Let me look at the comments before I go on to the next gags. Okay, so, the Corner Plus says, this is really fascinating, seeing the process. You thought about doing a workshop or something over Skype? I probably could, because even like at level 5, level 6, there's more things which happen. Because once I've tried it out in a comedy club, often that's not even the end, right? That's often not even the end. That's often when collaboration happens. Now, a lot of people don't understand when comedians collaborate. They often think that, oh, someone just writes the jokes for you. That doesn't work because no one can write like my brain, right? So no one can necessarily say something that's going to be funny coming from me. They could probably say something that's going to be funny coming from there. So how do comedians collaborate? How do writers' rooms work? Well, for me personally, I've only used it a bit in my radio show. So my radio show, Citizen of Nowhere, I wrote a draft of it, and then I got another talented comedian. His name's Scott Bennett. He's actually also streaming comedy every week, so you should check out his YouTube channel if you want to laugh. Brilliant guy. But the way that it worked was I got to like level 5, right? So I would write the joke, come up with the idea, know what I wanted to say, and then that's when I'd bring this guy on and I'd say, look, this is what I'm trying to say, right? The joke is kind of working. You've got a different perspective. Is there any way you think I could tweak it and make it work better? And then sometimes someone else's eye will make the joke go to an entirely different place. So the joke's never over. We're constantly changing it. Some people are collaborating. Sometimes the crowd tells you. And then sometimes you do all of this work and you go back to the beginning and just do the jump joke because that got the biggest laugh. Oh, excellent. One more question. Hi, tell Neil he's right from Luton. Well, you are right, Neil. Excellent. Neil is waiting for the rest of the set. Okay, the rest of the set. The next one is the Illuminati. Now, the Illuminati was a hard one for me to... Oh, no, sorry. Apologies. This is the opposite. Because of Corona, I do not have enough of my note cards. So I'm reusing note cards from other days. So on one side is the new joke, and on the other side is the joke from the other day. So here was an Illuminati joke from a few days ago, where I talked about the Black Illuminati and I talked about the Geek House Council, for any of you who saw that. But the joke for today is actually corruption, right? Now, corruption, this was suggested by @WhiteShadow667. And I had a few thoughts about corruption, right? One of the thoughts I had about corruption, which is it's an ongoing, constantly recurring theme in my comedy. But the new thought I had about it is I think that to not be corrupt at all, you have to either not have a family or not tell your family about it, right? If you're totally honest, I think you have to keep the honesty to yourself. Because it's all very well to think, oh, it's great to be honest. But can you imagine if you're some bureaucrat somewhere, right? And somebody offers you like £100,000, like, $200,000 to do something crooked, like, mess up the papers or something so that he can benefit. So somebody has tried to bribe you for $200,000. You go home and you say no to this person. That's the important part. You are an honest person and you say, no, hell no, I'm not corrupt. I'm not taking that money. I'm going to report you, right? And then you go home and you have to tell your wife, you know what? Somebody offered me $200,000 and I said no because I'm honest. I swear she will smack the fuck out. She will chase you out of, she will be like, why am I with the one honest man? Why did God give me an honest man? We could have had $200,000. You should have just taken the money, give $5,000 to charity. I'm just saying. That was my one thought about corruption. And there's actually an old joke. This is almost going to let you know the difference between level 1 jokes, where I've just got started, and a finished joke. So there's an old joke I wrote about corruption, which I don't think I've ever done online. I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist online. So I'm going to tell you now, and you'll see the difference between a fully created joke. So this joke is actually based on the fact that when I was going to school in Swaziland, right? I was at the school where there were a lot of people who worked for the government, kids of ambassadors and stuff like that. It was that kind of school. And I remember one of my friends, his dad was a politician, right? His dad was a politician in Lesotho, right? And I remember when we went to go visit him for the weekend, his dad was so corrupt, right? But not only was he corrupt, he was proud of it. He wouldn't even hide it. He would brag. Like, he'd have this new BMW and he'd call us all and he'd say, you see this car? I buy this car. Sweden! Oh, you see, I haven't done that joke in so long, I messed it up. So actually, he points at his car and he says, you see this car? Sweden. And we're like, no, actually, I think BMWs are German cars. They're not Swedish. He's like, no, you don't understand. I buy this car from the money that Sweden, they give me. I buy this car. And we're like, wait a second. Sweden gave a donation to Lesotho, which was meant to be used, for the education system. How could you spend it on this car? And he's like, you're a small boy, huh? You don't understand. Huh? When I was a small boy like you, huh? Big school, 500 students, huh? One school book. The teacher, she read the book. She tell us what it's like. So now, 500 school, I buy 500 school book. I give them to each school one with the change. I buy this car. And I was like, that's horrible. There are other things you could have done with the money. You could have given the money to, I don't know, buy computers or increase the salary of the teachers. It's terrible. And he's like, you don't understand. Everybody in Lesotho, they dream to have BMW. We cannot give everyone BMW. So I buy it. I drive it. I tell them what it's like. So that's my old corruption joke. And you can compare it with my new corruption joke, which is at level 1 and needs refinement. Okay, that is 2. Let us move on to the next one. Oh no, that is the full version of that. Okay, the next section is from @StewTaylor82, and he wanted a joke about vacuum cleaners. Now, I had a few thoughts about vacuum cleaners, which would have turned into a joke, right? So the first one is, I love robot vacuum cleaners. Have any of you seen robot vacuum cleaners? They're the coolest thing ever. You just put them down and they just start going around your house, just like cleaning everything. It's like a little cat or something like that. In fact, I wish I had a robot vacuum cleaner. I'd feel less alone in isolation, because at least I'd have a little friend, right? And they go around, they go underneath the tables, underneath everything, and they clean, and they've got a mind of their own. I don't understand. They learn the shape of your house, and every day they do it in a slightly different. I said I'd like to have one, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think it would actually start freaking me out, because I'm in isolation. I'd be like, how does it know? Right? I'd hear little sounds. I'll say, it's alive. It's Skynet. The robots are coming. So that was one angle I might have taken, right? The second angle I was considering was, this is actually a funny true story. So in Switzerland, they have strict sound laws, right? Noise pollution, you can get in trouble. You can't do any noise pollution. Things like on the weekends, right? If you live in an apartment building, even like flushing your toilet too loud is frowned upon, right? And there was a kid from Ghana, right, who was at EPFL, that's École Polytechnique Lausanne. It's in Lausanne. I don't know what the other letter is, but EPFL. EPFL is a very prestigious university, right? So he was studying there, and he didn't fully understand what these sound rules were. So over the weekend, in one of these places, people frown upon flushing of toilets. He started vacuuming, right? And not only was he vacuuming, cause he wanted to entertain himself while vacuuming, he blasted music while vacuuming, right? And they freaked out so much and got so angry with him. Like, he was like, police showed up at his door. He was almost like kicked out and deported. Could you imagine if you're deported for vacuum cleaning? That would suck. Bam! You see the stupid pun at the end of the story? There you go. And then the last thing, where this isn't actually a joke, it's just something uplifting, which I found, is that, Dyson, the people who make vacuum cleaners right now are attempting to switch all of their factories in the UK to, instead of producing vacuum cleaners, to produce ventilators, which can be used to fight coronavirus, because there's some similar technology involved. Isn't that uplifting? It's great how people are, adapting and trying to help. Awesome. That's that one. Okay, so let's look at the next. Let me take a look at the comments before I move on to the next gag. Jessica Swan, or helping underprivileged women. Oh, yes, I do love to help the underprivileged women. Okay, excellent. What are we doing? That is an in-joke. People who don't understand. Amber Alfonso says, this must be really weird for me, as in a show you can hear people laughing and reacting to your jokes while here it's silent. Kudos for being so much in control of your upbeat attitude. You have no idea. Like, honestly, sometimes I think that I'm going insane because I'm just talking to a screen. But every day it gets a bit easier, and I just hear the laughter in my head. Maybe that's not reassuring. Maybe you're going to call a psychiatrist to come see me. But actually, after some jokes, you'll even see I pause because I'm pausing for the laughter. I'm hearing applause. Trust me, if there's a joke you're not enjoying, in my head, you're cheering. Like, at the end of each show, I'm carried off stage by adoring fans. Okay, excellent. And then any other questions? Oh! At Michael Phillips, you wrote, I hear vacuum cleaner jokes really suck. So you see, it was a level 1 joke because you got to the punchline before I did. Excellent. Dr. Ramon G. Riviera, I am your twin. Okay, well, send me a picture and we'll see if you actually do look at me. Excellent. Hi, Zambia's watching. You're very welcome. Excellent. Let's go on to the next joke. Thank you all for being here in the Coronacast Comedy Show. Oh, also, I'll take this moment to say that if any of you are following it on audio, right? If any of you are following it on audio, I have a podcast version of the Coronacast Comedy Show. Tomorrow there's going to be a special edition where it's a short story. So I've written a short story, because I also write fiction, set in a future where something like the coronavirus has totally wiped out the world. And it's a little short story which I wrote, and I'm not going to just read it here. I think it'll be a bit weird, but I've got a friend of mine and she's read it, and so there's going to be an audio only special release of that story as sort of like an audiobook. So if any of you is interested, check that out tomorrow. Okay, let us move on to the next joke. Okay, the Illuminati. See, the Illuminati came again today. So this was actually a suggestion by I'm not even sure who it was, but George Tennant asked for a joke about the Illuminati, even though they've come up before, right? So this is the angle now this is where you will see how I would have needed a lot more time to really go where I wanted. Because I started to think that if there really is an Illuminati, for any of you who don't know who that is, that's a group of like quiet 5 or so people who run the world secretly. You know what I mean? There's always a theory that there's this cabal of people, and they meet and they decide which countries are going to go to war, who's going to win every election. These people are all powerful, and then other people can join them. Like, there are all these myths and stories about, people like Jay-Z joining the Illuminati, anyone famous joining the Illuminati. Either way, people who have these conspiracy theories about the Illuminati, I started to think, what would it actually be like to be part of the Illuminati? Because I think any of you know, no matter how odd your job is, after a while, it just becomes mundane. People who work at funeral homes, after a year, they're making jokes while they're chopping apart bodies. Like, everything can become normal. So I started to think about what it must be like for the Illuminati, who are now bored of their job. Every month they meet at the local Illuminati bar and they discuss what's going to happen in the world. It would be like any other group. One of the guys is going to come in late. One of them is going to as you see, I've not fully, but essentially this is almost a sketch. Like, in my radio show, Citizen of Nowhere, I did jokes, but I also did sketches. And I would love to write the sketch. In fact, when life comes to normal, I think I'll write the sketch of the Illuminati, but they're like, I write them like a bunch of accountants having a meeting. So they'll probably begin it with like, Henry apologizes for not being able to make this meeting because, while he was in South America trying to install a puppet dictator, he got diarrhea, right? And then the next person will say like, hey, before we move on, point of order, I would like to say that I will not be at the next meeting because it is my kid's 13th birthday, and they'll just have very normal chat while they're talking about toppling dictators, while they're talking about like, assassinating people and stuff like that. You'd be like, oh, do we think that we need to remove Boris Johnson? Do I hear aye? They'll take a vote. Do you think we need to remove Modi? Aye. No. Do we need, and just kind of make it like a very normal. I might even do a thing which is their WhatsApp group, because WhatsApp groups always have the same kind of characters. So the WhatsApp group of the Illuminati would still have the one guy who keeps sending like images which are very inappropriate, and there'll be one of them who's like, scolding them, saying, hey, we're trying to discuss the coronavirus and the way we're going to use it to get chips into people's bodies. This is not the time to be sending us pictures of your little kids. So that would have been a sketch. What could have been, what might have been, what could have been. Let us move on to the next one. The next one was at Sanders Jason 40 asked me to write a joke about millennials. I can do a joke about millennials. And millennials are people. It's a very vague term. When are you a millennial? It's usually defined as people who reached adulthood in the 21st century, right? People who reached adulthood in the 21st century are generally people who we call millennials. And if you look at how millennials are portrayed in the media right now, people generally, older people, feel that they are very narcissistic. They've got a sense of entitlement. They're always scolding at older people for being not woke enough, and being transphobic or being racist or being they feel like they know everything and older people don't, and they're very judgmental, right? And so this is how they're seen, and there's a lot of negative talk about millennials by older people. But I'll tell you what the interesting thing is. When you actually look at it in history, every generation thinks that about the previous generation, right? If you go to the 80s, they were complaining about the young people. If you go to the 60s, they're complaining about the young people. Every generation, when they feel old, feel like these kids are terrible. When I was young, we used to obey our parents. We used to have respect. And every generation, I don't know how they forget how crazy they were as kids, but every generation seems to look down on the previous generation, right? And then there's always like a cycle of pushback to what came before. So for example, wokeness, right? And saying, oh, it is wrong to call people, this is not necessarily a joke. This is more of like an analysis of what the world is, but you never know what I'm going to do on this show, okay? So, like wokeness and saying, oh, it's not okay to say these words when you're describing gay people. It's not okay to say these words when you're talking about black people, and not okay to use these words when talking about women. It's very interesting if you look at how the previous generation had become say anything you like, in response to like the previous generation's puritanism and religion. The next generation had people like Eminem and Madonna and people who cross every line, and it was like more than freedom of speech. It's like, I'm going to say everything. Marilyn Manson saying, I'm going to say absolutely everything. And now it's like, no. Some things you shouldn't say. That's this generation. And I bet the generation after is now going to start expressing their individuality by being very non-PC, because they're going to be like, hey, you can't control me. I can call a person that if I want. And I think there's always like a little bit of tennis back and forth from generation to generation. So not a joke, but a thought. But how it would become a joke is I would start with this idea and I'd play with it, and then I would turn it into a joke. If only I had 2 more hours. Oh, though an interesting thing is things like the coronavirus or a world war or something like that, which are global, they change that back and forth, and it enters a very new, surprising phase. So Lord knows where millennials are going to go right now because there's been a world-changing event. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. For example, like 9/11 caused the next... Anyway, doesn't matter. Let us move on to the next joke. Next suggestion was at Ellie Gutierrez wanted a joke about students. Students! I wonder if you are a student, Ellie. Now, this is a story some of you may have seen in the news, right? So, there is a dean. There is a dean in America, right, who responded to students asking for their tuition back in New York because they couldn't go to school because of all of this corona and they were just doing online courses and they wanted their money back, right? And she responded, she sent them a dancing video, right, of her dancing to a song, Losing My Religion, right? And she's being ripped apart on social media. People feel like it's very insensitive what she did. It's very idiotic. And, I started to write jokes about her, things like I was comparing her to Theresa May because her singing is very like all over the place in the same sort of way that the Prime Minister of the UK, Theresa May's dancing was all over the place. And also I probably could have done little gags about, she's singing Losing My Religion. She's playing Losing My Religion while she's losing her mind or stuff like that. That would have been the easy way to go. But the more I looked into this woman, the more I was like, the press doesn't operate. They don't necessarily give you the full story. They don't give you the full story because yes, it is true. Yes, it's true that she sent this video, but this video was sent at the end of a long communication where she explained that, the university is losing money just as people are losing money. It's actually costing them a lot of money to hire programmers and set up all this internet learning. And also she was hopeful that in a few months, Corona will be over and life will resume as normal so they can resume their courses. So there was all this logical speak. And then at the end of it, she threw in a video. And people have just ripped her apart, as the internet often does, for being an idiot. And I actually looked at the video and I actually think, what the shame is? It's because she can't dance. That's what it is, because she can't dance. Because there are certain people, if you could get a dance from them, right, it would make any communication better. Like, if you are friends with, like, Fred Astaire, right? If you are friends with Rihanna, you're like, throw in a dance at the end of every single email, for the love of God, please. So all I'm saying is, don't attack her for sending the dance. Just tell her to take a few dance lessons. Boom! Let's look at the next section. Like, next questions. Okay, so, wokeness. That's what you did at 10 a.m. today. Ba-boom, boom, at Marilyn Halverson. Excellent. This is going to be an explosion of babies being popped out 9 months from this month, Daliso. You say that, but a lot of us who would be impregnating multiple women are in isolation, all alone. So we are not doing our part. Let us move on. Excellent. What's the most unique Malawian proverb? Scare Ismail says. I don't actually know. My favorite proverb actually is actually a Zimbabwean proverb. And if you can talk, you can sing. If you can walk, you can dance. And I just believe that's a beautiful way to go through life. You know what I mean? Don't worry how good you're at it. Just do it. If you can talk, you can sing. If you can walk, you can dance. Okay, let's move on to the next suggestion. At Segmeister wanted a joke about cactuses. Now, cactuses are very interesting plants because they have adapted to being in the desert, right? So they have all kinds of adaptations, like they have little pockets which they can store water. And I realize that now my flat is metaphorically a cactus, right? Because it's got little pockets which are storing like toilet paper rolls. It's got little pockets which are storing cans, right? It's getting ready for a lot. And also things like I used to turn on the heat all the time. Now I just kind of ration it. I'm just like, I'm cactusing my entire lifestyle. But I also started thinking about like, every plant you give someone as a gift has got a subtext. It's got a meaning, right? So like red roses symbolize love. Yellow roses represent friendship. And I think being giving someone a cactus symbolizes that you don't want to give them any more plants because you have given them one that is going to live forever. So you're like, stop asking me for roses every Valentine's Day. I gave you a cactus, which is going to last you 4 years. And then the final thought. Actually, this one isn't that bad. The final thought I had about cactuses was that I actually think at Christmas time, we should use cactuses, right? Forget using redwood trees. Why? Because Jesus was born in desert conditions. There were no Christmas trees there. There were cactuses, right? So what we need to do, we start to use cactuses at Christmas time, but also think they're going to be positive signs. Because if you hang your lights and all of your ornaments on a cactus, you're not going to have little kids going and playing with the ornaments and pulling them off and stuff. Of course you won't, because they're going to poke their fingers with the thorns and bleed all over the floor. Okay. At McKenzie Mockridge. Sorry. Oops. I just did that. Okay. At McKenzie Mockridge has asked, are we all dead? And are we just living in a flashback? I read this and I realized that this person was writing suggestions to me while smoking weed, right? This is a weed kind of thought. These kind of weird, faux philosophical thoughts. Or like either he has been smoking lots of weed or he has been watching too much of the TV show Lost. Maybe he's just watching Lost every day in the course of this isolation or maybe he's been doing both, right? And occasionally people, especially people who are high, have these kind of university level philosophical thoughts. It's thoughts like, am I the only person in the world? Maybe I am imagining everybody around me. Or another one which you often hear is, if a tree falls in a forest, will anybody ever hear it? All of these things, I think they're a waste of time kind of logic, right? They're fun mind games, but why don't you try making them practical, right? And see what reaction you get. Like go to your girlfriend and say, if I cheat on you and you never ever find out, did I actually cheat on you? She will philosophically cut your balls off. As I said, I don't know where I would have gone with that joke, but you see where I started. Let's move on to the next one, which was at LozzyLou85. Wait, let me take a break, have a little drink. Look at the comment. At the swing, Low Bernie says, if a man makes a comment in the forest and a woman can't hear him, is it still wrong? That's exactly the kind of thought we were talking about. Law of requisite variety. I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds fascinating. Okay. At Abinaki Ismail says, hi, bro. I always wait for your comedy. You make the lockdown smackdown. Thank you so much. I mean, that's why I do it. I mean, honestly, I will say that, I didn't know I'd be doing it every day. But when I got a response, I think I'm doing it to keep myself sane, to keep you guys sane. Let's laugh our way through this. It's a depressing thing, but I think laughter is for this kind of moment. Okay, I've got around 3 or 4 little suggestions left. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at these level 1 jokes. Okay. At Lozzy_Lou85 wanted a joke about self-isolating in a small 1-bed flat. So you, Lozzy Lou, you're in the same situation as me, right? I've only got 1 bed in there. I'm in like a small 1-bed flat and I'm all alone. And oh my gosh, it drives you crazy, right? I actually think, you know what the worst thing about loneliness is? It's partly because it is so boring, right? In terms of things to be troubling you, it's boring. When you call your friends and you talk to them, and you know what I mean? You know, if you have the friend who's got the boyfriend who's always cheating on them, you feel sorry for them, but you'll listen to their story and you'll have a chat, they'll have a cry, you'll say, I get through it, and you'll cheer them up. And part of the thing is, they've got a problem which isn't boring. You're like, oh, what did the boyfriend do today? And they tell you the story of what the boyfriend do. Or if like someone, has something tragic, like, a family member has passed away. Yes, they're telling you about it, but at least it's an interesting thing they're telling you about. But when you're calling someone and they're like, how are you doing? And you're like, I'm lonely. It's so bloody boring, right? So that's part of the problem with if you are in a one bed flat and your problem is you're lonely, is that you can't talk to anybody about it because you don't want to just bore the hell out of them, right? And then the second thing is, as much as I was a little bit down, I had a positive thought. And I think you need to have the same positive thought, Lou. As much as it's frustrating being alone, it is so much better than being in isolation with somebody who you kind of like or you don't like at all and you're just stuck with them. You know what I mean? Like if you have a roommate who gets on your nerves, if you have a wife who kind of pisses you off, you will be divorced at the end of this isolation. You will have murdered that roommate by the end of this isolation. And so sometimes it's better to be alone, okay? And then I did come up with, this isn't a joke, but I think the ways that you can cope with this isolation, I have found 3 things helpful me a lot, is having routines, right? So this isn't even the joke, but this is just me giving advice. I think having a routine makes it help. So I wake up in the morning, I do some exercises, I write my book, then I phone some people, make some lunch, then I write this show for 4 hours, then I do this show, then I edit this show. That's like a full day. It gives me purpose. You don't have time to sit and be alone and lonely. Also, call people who you really want to call, right? So don't call obligation people. Call people who make you laugh. Call people who make you smile. Call people you wish you knew better, if only use this moment. And then the other one is you need a purpose. You need a purpose. It makes people need meaning. My purpose is making people laugh. And so as long as I'm doing my purpose, I'll be fine through this, right? And then the last one is if you, I had a 4th comment. I don't know what it was. And if you have 2 pillars after placing hot water, and the last one was, this was where I was trying to be funny, but also find a little tip if you're in isolation in a little place, is what you should do is if you get some hot water bottle and you put 2 pillows together and you put the hot water bottle underneath it and you hug it, it kind of feels like a person. Oh my gosh. Oh Lord. Okay, let's go on to the next one. At Barnaby Winstanley wanted a joke about the government. The government! Now, I'll tell you the interesting thing. Right now, a lot of governments, in fact, all governments around the world, are having to put in really draconian measures, right? Things like you can't leave your house. We'll arrest you if there are more than 4 or 5 of you together. All these kind of measures. And it kind of tells you how you feel about your government. Because it's interesting. In the UK, it shows how much you trust the government. That people are just kind of being like, okay, because you have faith that the end of this, they'll go back to normal. While in a lot of African countries, there's a lot more nervousness because we're like, oh my Lord, they are going to like having this power and they're never going to let it go. We have been trained by dictators in the past. So there's much more nervousness because it even happens in Western countries. Think about it this way. After 9/11, they introduced monitoring all the phones, taking all the data. And then after the terrorist level was gone, they were like, hey, let's just kind of keep this. So after this is all over, it'll be interesting to see what governments keep and what they let go of, right? I know there was no joke in that. That was just kind of like some paranoid thought. There was a joke in there somewhere. Let's see. After things over, they decide heard people about. The joke was actually I listened to some people at the grocery store who were talking about why China was doing better with the coronavirus than the UK. And they were saying, you know why it is? It's because they are scared of the government there, right? They're a dictatorship. So if the Chinese government says, hey, don't come out of your houses. If we see you are going to lock you up, people know they mean business and they listen, but no one thinks the same of the government. And I was like, how weird is the world that you are thinking longingly about being under dictatorship and having less freedom? That's like, it's like, oh, if only my husband would beat me. What's wrong with you? Yes, maybe dictatorships are efficient, right? But at the same time, you don't want the other stuff that's going on in there to happen with you. Nazi Germany had trains running on time. It's not worth it. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So we go to the next one. It's the second last one. So let me take a final perusal at the notes and comments. Daliso, my joke about Nigeria wasn't cool but funny. Look, I'm telling you the interesting thing about my jokes. I piss off people all the time. It's part of being a comedian, and I like it, right? I like it because I don't want to be a comedian who just talks about easy subjects, because you can be a comedian who just jokes about, turning lights on and off, and does jokes about cats, and does jokes about, forks and knives, and does jokes about things that are just observations which don't interest people. I pissed off a woman royally on my What the African Said jokes because she didn't like the stuff about white guilt, and she was going on about why can't black people get over it. I didn't imprison any of you, and it really triggered her, really bothered her. And again, some people who are from a country, and I make fun of them, it gets under their skin. But I think that's part of the trade, right? If I'm going to talk about stuff that matters, sometimes I might bother you. And I take it too. When I watched the Book of Mormon, it was a very, very funny thing. Very funny show. But there were bits where me as a religious person I was shook, right? I was shook. I was bothered. I thought as a comedian I was immune to getting bothered. But at the same time, I wasn't upset. I was like, you know what? Sometimes art bothers you. It's fine. It's like sometimes, a movie makes you cry. Sometimes a movie makes you terrified. We want all the emotions. So if you were bothered by one of my jokes, that's part of the exchange. Art's meant to do that. Okay, let's go to the second last one. The penultimate one is a joke suggestion from @HeavenStrikeForce. And @HeavenStrikeForce wanted a joke about okapis. Now, the interesting thing is, this is the third time this man has made this suggestion. On my first jokes by suggestion, he asked for okapis. Today he asked for this guy keeps asking for okapis. Now, okapis are like little, like a cross between like a horse and a giraffe. They're little weird animals. This guy keeps asking for it. I've come to the conclusion he must have one in his basement, right? @HeavenStrikeForce kidnapped an okapi. He's keeping it in his basement, but now, because of the coronavirus, he doesn't know what to do with it because he needs that space to keep all his extra toilet roll, and he's panicking, and it's like a hidden message in write a joke about okapi. He's just like, what should I do with the okapi? Should I eat it? What should I set it free to run the streets of Yorkshire? I don't know what to do with the okapi, right? Now, okapis, very interesting animals, right? They've got striped legs like a giraffe, but they've got like their middle just looks like a horse, and their face looks like a giraffe. They used to be called the African unicorn. But this is when things get very interesting. I checked out Encyclopedia Britannica, right? It's much better than Wikipedia. I don't know why people go to Wikipedia all the time. Go to like a real encyclopedia. And it talked about how okapis are shy, reclusive, and keep to themselves. Now, what else do people always describe as shy, reclusive, and keeping to themselves? People who go on killing sprees. Maniacs. After they've gone and they've killed a bunch of people, what do you hear the next morning? All their neighbors saying, oh, he was really shy. He always kept to himself. He was reclusive. Bam! Clearly, okapis are maniacs who go on killing sprees. I would watch out if I was you, Heaven Strike. They are clearly the serial killers of the animal kingdom. Stay away from that okapi. They're dangerous. I think most okapis are one bad day away from going on a rampage and just kicking elephants and antelopes and spitting on warthogs and just going on a killing spree. That's the second last. We have come to the last one. Before the last one, I will say, if any of you enjoyed this show, want to support me, if you look at the top of this video, there are the details of my Patreon where you can give me you can sponsor this show. If you sponsor this show, whatever suggestions you make will always be used. You see, I always go through my Facebook, my Twitter, and Instagram, and I choose what to do. But if you're a Patreon, I will always use your suggestion. Or you can go on Ko-fi, same deal. If you go on Ko-fi, you can support the show. You can give me like £1, £2. Doesn't have to be a lot of money, but if you're rich, give me a lot. And then if you are, the other ways you can send directly on PayPal, spilting@hotmail.com. But look, If you don't have money, you are more than welcome. I'm not demanding this. There's no paywall. There's no paywall over here. Just enjoy the show. Tell a friend, tell a few friends if you enjoy the show, because if I build the audience, eventually I'll start making money off YouTube or sponsors or something. So there are other ways you can support me, because it's a lot of work. Okay, let's do the last joke. The last joke, ladies and gentlemen. The suggestion came from @Gems1983 2011. And @Gems wanted a joke about courage. Now, this is an interesting thing to think about, because I think we always have to ask ourselves, are we courageous, right? Am I a coward or am I courageous? You know? And I started thinking, like, if a friend of mine's in a fight, I'll jump in, but that's not really a true marker of courage. So I started looking at stories of the most courageous people in history, and I found people like Witold Pilecki, who purposely got himself sent to Auschwitz during the Second World War so that he could spend 2 years, gathering evidence that it wasn't a normal prison camp and it was committing atrocities. And then he broke out in 1943 so that he could tell people what was going on. How brave is this dude? Going into Auschwitz willingly to expose the Germans. That's amazing. There's another guy, Anthony Omari. He fought off machete-wielding attackers in Kenya to defend an orphanage. Beautiful. Tales of courage. And after reading a few of these, I realized I am not courageous at all. I can admire these things, but I'm not doing it. I'm not infiltrating a concentration camp. I don't even know if I'd be brave enough to stand up against a dictator. You know what I mean? When a dictator says, if someone was hiding in my bathroom and the people with the guns came and said, "Where is he?" I don't know if I would have the courage to lie and say he's not here. I might just be like, "He's in the bathroom, right there, there he is, check him out, there he is, leave me alone." I don't know if I've got that courage, man. I get scared just getting an injection. But then again, maybe I'd surprise myself, because you don't necessarily know your hidden depth until the moment comes. Hopefully, none of us will have to face that moment where we have to find out whether or not we are courageous. I'm about to go out, but before I go out, let me see if there are any final comments. Charlotte Winrose says, as a zoologist, she finds this interesting. It is interesting. And Elisa Gutierrez says, "You speak Welsh, and it didn't bother me when I made a joke about it on BGT. It actually made me feel smarter." Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. That was actually a wonderful joke. In fact, let's end this little stream with my joke, which I did on Britain's Got Talent Champions, which Elise Gutierrez had. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to end with one of my favorite jokes, which Elise just brought up, and it's a joke about how in Africa, the churches are very different, right? I don't know if any of you have ever been to an African church, like an African Pentecostal church like I grew up with. They're full of drama, right? We got people clapping, right? We got people singing. We got people jumping out, people yelling, "Hallelujah! Amen! It's a party." This is what I grew up with. The first time I went to a British white church, I was confused. It was so boring. Ever going Domini, Domini, Domini. It was so boring. Nobody was standing up. I was like, God is busy. You've got to get his attention. And African churches are even better because we have got miracles going down. Oh yeah. Somebody can throw crutches in your face. I was once next to a woman who started speaking in tongues. I didn't expect it. She just got up and she started to shake. And she went, I didn't know what it meant. Then I moved to the UK. Now I know it was Welsh. So that's that joke. And that's a level 5 joke, which has been rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. I hope you see the difference. Same time, every day, 9 p.m. This day's show, where I hadn't even written anything, happened to be an hour. It's amazing. Thanks for sticking it out. And I'll be back tomorrow. Bye.